Hello and welcome back to the Villa podcast. A podcast that we probably should have expected to be recording, but I think given the sort of brief 48-hour period, which in all honesty, Dan, has felt like probably about a week, to be fair, hasn't it? The news has obviously come out today. Dean Smith has been sacked from Aston Villa. Dan, what are your thoughts on this, mate? I know we've spoke a lot about this in recent times, but of course now it's kind of confirmed. We thought we'd hop on for you guys and just discuss Dean Smith's tenure at Aston Villa, because I think there's a lot of things to talk about, and there's a lot of sort of good things that have come out of this 3-year spell, hasn't there, mate?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually feel for once like sort of social media has really hit a nice tone. It's not often you get that, is it? Really, not just with Villa, but with any manager sacking. Like it's usually a bit bitter, or there's usually quite a happy, upbeat reaction to it. And I feel like we're stay classy, Aston Villa. We've done it really nice. I feel like everyone. I've not seen too many people questioning the decision, which I think is good, because you have to support the board. But on the same side, a lot of people thanking Dean, being very grateful for the journey that he's taken us on, and I think it's been the perfect reaction, I would say, because we saw a few reports last night saying Purslow was willing to give him maybe the Brighton game, and it just didn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense to wait for a whole international break to the first game back, then make your decision. You know for well, as Norwich have also done this week, that it's best done now, as Barcelona have done this week. A lot of clubs have chosen this international break. Mid-November, you've still got plenty of time to go in this season, as the time in which to change your manager. And it feels good that it's been a very positive reaction. But it's one of those where despite knowing it was coming, and we basically both admitted it in the last podcast, is that we think this is the time now where this Dean Smith ride is going to come to an end. It still hurts, doesn't it? It's still very sore, and it's one of those where he's become so synonymous with the club. It's almost difficult to imagine another face on the touchline. And all of his shaky's gone. It's the whole band, and I'm very excited. I want to say this. I'm very excited as to what is to come next. I think if we get the appointment right, it could be a very exciting period for Aston Villa. But at the same time, I the most liked manager in my lifetime. There's not really been too much controversy surrounding Dean Smith, and it's been a pleasure, hasn't it, mate? It's been a pleasure.
It has. It really feels like we've had the identity of our club just kind of ripped away from us, though, doesn't it, Dan? I think there is obviously much more to managing a football club and sort of being in the business of football than just simply being a fan. That would never have been enough to have kept Dean in the job for this long. I think anyone that thinks Dean has only been in the job this long because he is a Villa fan is totally wrong. But it hurts. We've lost our club captain, in the summer, to lose our manager as well, who's also a boyhood Villa fan. It's confusing, man. I think it's somewhat of an identity crisis going on at the club at the moment. Not only just sort of on the pitch, stylistically, but sort of off the pitch, because, for us, Dan, as you said, easily Dean Smith, the best manager of our lifetime. What he'd given to the club, the life he brought back to the club. We were on our knees, 18th in the Championship, and this man walked in and defied all odds and gained automatic promotion in his first season, of course, keeping us up as well. It was the fairy tale that was never meant to be, unfortunately. And we've gone this far with Dean. Would I say his tenure at Aston Villa has been unsuccessful? Absolutely not. I think that he's achieved things that so many, in recent years have tried and completely fallen short, Dan. You only have to look at the likes of Remy Gard, Tim Sherwood, Roberto Di Matteo, and dare I even utter his name, Steve Bruce. With sort of endless sort of possibilities with transfers and the money that we'd spent and the players that we were able to attract at the time, they all fell short. And Dean was the one who managed to kind of defy all odds and put Aston Villa back on the map, which is something that I think more people are acknowledging that than aren't, which is nice to see, as you kind of alluded to there, Dan, because I can understand why people are frustrated when things aren't necessarily going the club's way. If you were a Dean out person, I hope that you can kind of accept what he's done for the club. I think that's a more than reasonable thing to ask. But no, Dan, Dean Smith, the 5th manager in the Premier League to get a sack, and we're only just in November. That's crazy that 25% of the Premier League managers have been replaced from the start of the season. That to me is mind-boggling, but it's the international break, man. It's a very dangerous time, especially when things aren't necessarily going your way. I think the past 2 international breaks, we've constantly thought, right, Villa will come back better. Unfortunately, it hasn't been that way. But, it's interesting seeing the reports from like Birmingham Live and from, the likes of Percy and that saying that Perslow and Nassef and Wes won't be rushing the decision. I would have hoped, Dan, sacking the manager, we would have had the replacement lined up. And I'm sure there's probably 2 or 3 candidates that stand out more so than others. But ideally, with this time that obviously we have players that will be going away, like Marv and McGinn and Tyrone and etc. But these extra days to sort of meet the squads, sort of implement how you're going to do things on the training ground, I think can't really go understated. So am I somewhat disappointed that we don't know who it is yet? Yeah, mate, I can't lie.
It's one of those where I think I trust these guys enough to have made their selection. And I think we're not blessed with a particularly brilliant talent pool of managers. Well, on the elite level, there's actually more good managers around that people give credit to, I think. But Villa are a step below that. The sort of market for your Zidanes and the like and the Contes before he's just gone to Spurs is a level above Villa. But that sort of second rung of managers, there's a few names. We talked Lucien Favre and Fonseca and stuff like that on the last podcast. We're seeing the likes of Gerrard been touted, which, I think he's going to do. Whenever managers come down from Scotland, it's always going to divide opinion. But I don't know. I like a lot of what Gerrard's done now. I think it's a big gamble. Yes, I think there's a lot of Rangers fans that think he wouldn't take the job, but Brendan Rodgers left Celtic for Leicester and has never looked back. And so I don't think you can quite rule that out. And so there's a few names around and stuff like that, but it's you and I were just discussing before we came on air, mate, about whether it's an appealing job right now. And it sounds kind of crazy to say because when you take the job on paper, it's very appealing because you have a big club with huge financial backing, with a very talented squad of players that there's a variety of different ways to play them, as we've seen this season. There's loads of different ways that you can play these boys. So it's not like, if you have a manager that fancies a 3-back, then they haven't really got the tools to do it. There's a lot of different ways you can play this squad. You've got an attractive fan base in the Premier League. You've got, there's a model there where they're chasing Europe. I mean, on paper, it's very appealing, but you rightly pointed out, if a new manager comes in and we don't get the points we need from the Brighton game, which is I watched them last night against Newcastle, and for the most part, they're great. They're everything that we haven't been for so long. They're a fantastic style of play. They play great football. Palace under Vieira are reborn. They look completely revitalised. That's not a tough game. If you don't get the points in those games, mate, suddenly you're looking over your shoulder a little bit. And so, look, it's one of those where, I'm not for a second thinking a manager's going to come in and his first job has got to be save us from the drop, because I don't think we're quite there yet. But it's a job that, you're right, has sort of made and broken managers in recent years. There are some managers that have managed better. Dean Smith is a perfect example when managing the club has really put a name on the map. And, Dean will go and get another good job now, probably another project because he's suited to those kind of jobs based on what he's done for Villa, namely in the Premier League. But it's not necessarily always the way. You reeled off those names before, mate, where good managers, reputable managers in their own right, have come into the club and not really been heard of after it. So it's difficult. It's difficult. The club have got to get it right. They've got to try and unite the fan base, which is never easy. got to try and appease key figures within the squad. But I'm excited. I'm excited. I don't know why, but something tells me this is going to be good. I think the fact that we haven't dragged this out, the fact that we didn't give it the other games, the fact that we've acted quickly suggests to me that there's a plan. The fact that Shakespeare's gone tells me that there's a plan, because it's not like we've appointed him caretaker. Do you know what I mean? Which is what you've seen Newcastle do, whereby they needed that time to get it right. So they appointed the caretaker to, see him pass in a few games, then they act. The fact that we've got rid of the whole backroom staff tells me that we're not going to have to wait too long. And I'm sure we'll be doing another podcast in the next couple of days, mate, because I'm guessing there'll be some news for us.
Boy, I'm glad that Shakespeare's gone as well. I mean, we know what kind of a slimy character he can be. I think we'd seen with Ranieri at Leicester and how he couldn't accept that job quicker, could he? As soon as Ranieri got the sack. It's interesting, though, because we've not really heard much on the likes of Aaron Danks and Austin McPhee, Neil Cutler, people like them. Hopefully they'll stick around. Obviously, you don't want anyone to lose their jobs, but on the whole, mainly, I think we've seen the work that Cutler's done since he joined the club. He's been a fantastic addition. And Danks and McPhee, obviously, fairly new, only just getting blooded in. I can't imagine that the board would be overly keen on getting rid of them. So maybe that's a bridge that they have to cross when it comes to sorting out whoever's coming in next. But there's a lot of. I mean, I think Sky has suspended the betting on Steven Gerrard to take the job. JT is one of the favourites as well, 1-1 to take the job. An appointment like that, or even a Frank Lampard, it feels so personal, which is what worries me. I hope the owners have some form of say or opinion on who's getting this job, because I genuinely think it would be disastrous if we got someone like Gerrard, Lampard, Terry involved at this stage. Of course, if any of them three were appointed, wholeheartedly, they have my support to the very end. But it seems like a big risk, and even a Fonseca's a risk. Mm-hmm. This he's interviewed for every available Premier League job that's sort of happened since the summer: Palace, Newcastle, Tottenham, and hasn't been appointed. So there's that to consider as well. I think we spoke a bit more about Fonseca in the last podcast, so I'm sure you guys will check that out if you haven't already. That'd mean the world. But yeah, it's a tough time right now, man. We've got to just sort of. I think all we can do is just be patient and wait. As I say, it's kind of frustrating not knowing, but I do trust that the board will make the correct decisions. And I think everyone, especially people who have been Smith out, you owe it to this team. You owe it to Nassef and Wes and Christian to support whoever the next appointment is, because ultimately you've got what you've wished for at this point, which is totally fine. I think it is fair to acknowledge that Dean had possibly took us as far as he could, and you shouldn't be scared of change. I think hopefully whoever comes in next, Dan, they will have a very talented pool of players to work with, although not a very deep squad. But I think given the money that had been spent and the sort of expectations of the project, it's going to be a relatively tough job for whoever comes in, but nevertheless, it's exciting times, Dan. Exciting times. I mean, who would you like to see, mate? Because people keep asking me, and I don't really have a solid answer. And they go, "Well, you have a Villa podcast. You should know." But it's not that simple. Because if it was, I would be making the decisions, not Christian Perslow.
It's a very good point, mate. I think of those three British managers, Gerrard would be my pick. Lampard is the one. Lampard and Terry are the ones for me that I wouldn't touch with a barge pole. Gerrard, I'd be more open to. I think there's an interesting name in the mix. Is Kasper Hjulmand, who rightly, as I was, I thought it's like that rings. Who is that? Is the Denmark manager, and with Langer as well at the club, that is not a reach. That's a one where you go, okay, that's really got legs actually when you think about it. A lot of managers from national teams, it's a lot easier to make the national team make a move for a manager of a national team than it is for a club manager. Perhaps not during the international break, but
see you lads.
Yeah, exactly. That's an interesting one. Fonseca would be a lot of fun it would be a lot of fun. He'd certainly get us playing the attacking football we want, as we said in the last podcast, mate. But whether he could do everything else that demands of a Premier League manager remains to be seen. You're right.
No defending, it's just vibes with
It is,
Fonseca,
but
innit? I think that's what worries
that's
me.
the same with Lucien Favre, isn't it? It's just, you know, his Dortmund teams and his Mönchengladbach teams were just were a load of fun to watch going forward. But you know, it's more you win goals by outscoring the opposition, which is fine. That's, you know, it's a tactic that works for those managers. Clearly worked for Lucien Favre, because look at his track record, look at the teams he's managed. But you know, is that what we want at Aston Villa? Is that a mentality that can take you from mid-table into Europe? Potentially not. I think you need a bit more stability, which is why I don't think we'll go for a Fonseca or a Favre. It's an interesting appointment. We've got to get it right. Boy, oh boy, do we have to get it right. Because if you get it wrong and the club regresses, we're in a whole lot of mess. So the club have got to get it right. But I trust them. I think you have to give them that. I think the board have earned our trust. They've given the club everything that they can in the time period, all the investment, all the well wishes, or, you know, some of the recruitment in terms of players has been hit or miss, but that's the nature of the game. I would say that overwhelmingly there's been more hits than misses, and so hopefully that works for our favour in the manager. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll see in the next coming days, mate. So those names are out there, and I think it will be one of the ones we've mentioned.
Fingers crossed, mate. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this podcast, which I probably find a bit strange, to be honest, make sure you hit the like, comment your thoughts below on who you would like to take charge of Aston Villa. Get a debate going. We'd like to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell notification so you never miss an upload from us. We will be dissecting whoever the new appointment is. At least this has given us some stuff to talk about during the international breakdown as well. So alas, there will be podcasts coming at you thick and fast. Don't you worry. So yeah, as I said, if you enjoyed this, hit the like button, comment your thoughts below and subscribe for more. Up the Villa.